Ambassador Pyykkö. Thank you for making time to visit the Manila Times.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. Maybe before we start, maybe I know Finland is not something that we uh, normally not a typical place that Filipinos visit. But maybe you can tell us something about your country, right? And maybe what do you think Filipinos should think about when they think of Finland? And besides snow and
Well, you mentioned snow. I think because now it's still winter in Finland, and I
Yeah.
know that it's very winter in Finland for Filipinos. It's exotic, and even to me, when I think living now here and think about snow and very little light, forests they are covered with snow, and Santa Claus lives and comes from
Okay.
Finland. That's
all
very
right,
important.
that's the association that we want to
Exactly. And the Philippines, this is a great Christmas country. So I that's the message that I try to spread here before Christmas in the fall season. And people too, I mean, Filipinos do increasingly travel to Finland to see aurora borealis, the special lights in the
Yes,
sky. And
yes.
so,
So we can go there to see that, huh? Okay.
yes, absolutely. But the thing is obviously that you cannot order them to be there when
Yes,
you go
of
there.
course,
So,
yeah.
so
Depends
if you are
on
lucky,
the-
you can see them.
Yeah.
And then again, in the summer, in the European summertime, June, July, August, it's endless light.
Sunlight,
Yeah,
daylight,
exactly. Daylight. So like it's 24 hours light, and
Yeah.
it's hard to get to sleep. So people
Yeah.
go out and they
But there are
spend time.
times of the year when it's almost dark the whole day, or
Yeah, in Lapland in December,
okay.
it is really. It's
Wow.
kind of a grayish blue for a few hours, and otherwise it's
Wow.
basically dark.
The last time I met an ambassador from Finland, they were telling me a joke about World War II.
Right.
That there was some old woman who was living near the border between Finland and Russia, and they were asking her, we're drawing the border. Which side do you want to belong to, the Russian side or the Finnish side? And she said she wanted to be on the Finnish side because she heard it was cold in Russia.
Well, yeah, there are many other reasons why people would want to stay on the Finnish side. Maybe we get to that as well. But very good.
Speaking of Russia, I mean, of course, it's major news here and around the world. What's going on in Ukraine? You are at the border with Russia, at the forefront
Absolutely.
of tension. Maybe give us an update. What's going on? What's your sense of how things are developing? It doesn't look good from the news, but how is it from the ground? I mean, from your part of the country.
Yeah, it does not look good, and we have to start where it all started. 24th of February. It's soon a year, and actually it started earlier, end 21, because that time the Russian President Putin started to talk about spheres of influence.
Right.
And that is something that raised our alert, because until that, Mr. Putin had always said, for example, to Finland, that we have the freedom of choice for our foreign and security policy. But starting to talk about spheres of influence, that sounded, old stuff from the Second World War, for example, come back to minds with those expressions. And then it was only 24th of February when it was all started. And obviously, we share a land border with Russia. So we are in the proximity, and in that sense, this is very critical to us.
Right.
And obviously, what the Russian aggression was the reason that now we are applying for membership in the NATO.
Right.
But on a more general level, what Russia is doing here is a blatant, grave breach of international law. Russia is a permanent member of the United Nations Security Council, and the permanent member of that council is doing something like this, severely breaching international law. This is something, and that's why this is not a European issue. This is a multilateral international issue, and it cannot go unpunished. And people who do this, and the regime in Moscow, they have to be held accountable.
I was watching an interview of your Prime Minister Sanna Marin at the World Economic Forum, and she was quite vocal about the atrocities in Ukraine, and she was saying that if the West had been more aggressive, I think she was implying that if Ukraine had been a member of NATO, maybe this would not have happened. Do you share that? Do you share that view, or is that?
That's what I know. That's what my Prime Minister said. That I do understand her point of view there. And now recently, the Munich Security Conference just took place, and there my prime minister, she said that we, all the international community, we should have reacted more forcefully when Russia tried to illegally annex Crimea
Yeah.
in 2014.
Yeah, I think that was her point, that it wasn't,
Exactly.
the world didn't, pay attention to it at the
Enough,
time.
strongly enough. And that is, I share that perspective. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, what do you think the end game will be, Ambassador? Because it's all uncertain, and of course, the world is waiting with bated breath on what the outcome will be, at least for this year. Hoping that there will be some resolution to the conflict, to maybe get back on a recovery mode from the pandemic's economic impact. But there are some people we talked to who said that there seems to be no end in sight, and that the fighting may just continue until Ukraine and Russia are just tired of killing each other. Is that what do you think is the more likely end game, or is there a way? Is that an impossible question to answer?
It's a difficult question, because I mean, what my political leadership in Finland, what they have been implying is that unfortunately it looks that we might be in this for a longer period
For
of
a
time.
long haul.
Because the thing is, as we strongly believe, that when it's time for peace negotiations, it has to be on the conditions that Ukraine itself sets.
Okay.
Russia and Putin are not to set the conditions or the situation where peace talks can commence.
Right.
So it has to be a just peace, and it's in the hands of Ukrainians to see when it happens. And as we all see, the atrocities by Russian Federation are going on day by day. And
you felt that because people are pouring over your border from what we heard from the news. Is that still going on? Or?
Not pouring, but yeah, there have been. I mean, at
people
some point
crossing.
there will. Yeah, exactly. People who have right to cross the border to come into Finland. I mean, with visa or residence permit for earlier times. Right. Yeah. Exactly.
They're trying to escape the fighting, or some we heard Russians trying to escape being
the mobilization
drafted.
Yeah, that was happened. Yeah, when the first wave of mobilization was going through. Yeah.
And what is how is Europe faring? We know that or we've heard that Europe may be facing a recession, largely because of what's going on in Ukraine and Russia. The global outlook, there's been some improvement somewhat, but has there been any developments on the economic situation for Europe?
Yes, that is true. The economic situation in Europe is tough, including in Finland, and partly due to the energy shock that we are going through, because we are obviously getting rid of Russian fossil fuels totally. But as many say, and I share that perspective again, that there is a silver lining in the way that we are getting rid of fossil fuels. At the same time, that is speeding up our transition to green energy, renewable energy. So that is one, in a way, positive development. But as European Union and Europe, I mean, I'm as a European, I'm very proud that EU and Europe has been unified and stayed unified in the middle of these challenges. I mean, economic, energy challenges, and that really shows the power and strength of the European Union. Like in any family within the European Union, in normal times there are always differences of opinion. I mean, between countries, like in any family and or grouping of countries. But now, in the middle of this crisis, there is great unity, and that is what I think is extremely important. That. And as they say, I think President Putin and Kremlin, they were surprised, and they are surprised to see that we stay united against the Russian aggression.
Right. Now, I think what surprised people also was the change of mind of Finland, Sweden, about NATO. Originally, your countries were reluctant to join that organization, and of course, that all changed when Russia invaded Ukraine. What's the latest there? Because there were some hiccups, I think some objections posed by Turkey to your membership, or to the membership of Sweden and Finland. Right.
Yeah, as I said earlier, so due to the Russian aggression, we in Finland, like they did in Sweden, the government started a process preparing the submitting the application, and what
Right.
we did last year. And in Finland, I'm proud to say that it was a very democratic process in the sense that the issue obviously was sent to the parliament. The parliament debated it, and a great majority of the MPs, they are in favor of applying for the membership. Likewise, majority of the population, they are now in favor of applying. Before the Russian aggression, it was only like a quarter or less than 30% of Finns were in favor. So there has been a great change. And I want to raise this because I think it's important that when there is a big change in foreign and security policy in any country, and now in my country, it's very important that there is a democratic process behind it. Now, having said that, that's true what you said, that there are still 2 ratifications missing from the existing NATO members, Hungary and Turkey. And obviously the ratification by those countries, they are in those countries' hands.
Right.
And that's the situation at the moment.
But it seems like Finland might be joining NATO before Sweden. What did you do that the Swedes need to do as well?
Well, how we see the situation here is that from the very beginning of our application process, political leadership in both countries, Finland and Sweden, they have underlined that it makes sense and we want to go together.
Okay.
And this is still what we are saying, that we want to go together because in many respects it makes sense.
Right.
But again, my president made the point in Munich yesterday or the day before that if it happens that Turkey ratifies our application earlier than Sweden's, it's in their hands.
Right.
We cannot block them from ratifying our application.
Right.
So we know where we are. It's a complicated situation, but I mean, we certainly believe in the fact that eventually Finland and Sweden will be members of NATO.
Are there any concerns that because of that maybe just playing devil's advocate, Ambassador, that might give Russia a reason or an excuse to expand the conflict? What is there a fear among the Finnish people that it could escalate?
I would not say that there is a fear. I mean, I've been asked in the Philippines now for a year, every now and then, I've been asked, do you feel threatened in Finland?
Yeah.
We don't feel threatened in Finland. I mean, Finns living there now, we don't feel threatened. And the reason behind that, staying cool, maybe it is that, all the time, although we have had a very good relationship with Russian Federation until the aggression, we have been trading a lot, but we have always kept in mind, in the back of our minds that we have to be prepared. In Finland we have conscription. I have done my military service early on. And
yours is shorter, right? I mean,
11 months.
Yes.
Yeah.
Barely
It's not like many years. That is true.
Yeah.
But what I want to say here that we have, throughout our independence since 1917, we have wanted to stay prepared militarily as well. We have conscription, we have a strong military, our defense forces, and we have wanted to show to us and to the rest of the world that we are prepared, whatever comes.
Right.
So we don't feel threatened, and as we see, there is not a direct military threat at the moment from Russian Federation against Finland.
Right.
But obviously the situation in the region, in the Baltic region, it is more tense than earlier.
Right. Now, turning to this part of the world, what is your foreign policy towards Southeast Asia or maybe Asia in general? What's your marching orders from home?
Right, this is the question, and the part of the background to the fact that Finland reopened embassy here in the fall of 2020, and I came to reopen our embassy, is absolutely that Asia is the place to be. I mean, this is the continent to be. A lot of things are obviously happening here. One, if I start from the bigger picture in a way, obviously one issue that we follow with keen interest in Europe and in Finland is the geopolitical rivalry in the region by superpowers. And there, obviously, the European Union, as Finland is a member of the European Union, we want to be a balanced actor, part of that superpowers playing field in a way. And as the European Union says, we want to partner with any country that share our values. So European Union wants to be part of that. architecture here as well. Now, more specifically on Southeast Asia, we see a lot of opportunities here.
Okay.
I mean, economically, this is a powerhouse. Your country, the Philippines, this is a real powerhouse. I mean, you have 110 million people, mostly English-speaking, young population, all these trumps that you know that you have. And now the GDP growth rates, what you have here, it's totally different from Europe, as we know. We estimate that in Finland this year, our economy grows 0.3%.
Okay.
And what do you have here? 5 to 7%.
5 to 6%.
So, I mean, this is the place to be in terms of business creation, business facilitation, and then, as I said, the geopolitics. So in many, many respects, this is a very attractive region for Finland.
I'd like to ask you about that, but maybe if I can circle quickly back to the geopolitics. I think Mrs. Marin was saying that the events in Ukraine had caused some leaders in Finland to rethink their relationships with other countries, and that she was saying something like that the priority of Finland should be to deal with democratic countries rather and to reassess its relationship with countries run by dictators or autocrats. She didn't mention China, but of course, you know, that's the elephant in the room there, of course. But is that, you know, you mentioned the rivalry in the region. Is that a concern? Are you seeing hints of maybe something that you saw in Ukraine and Russia that you know has not yet happened here, but you know could be prevented?
Yeah, maybe I start from the international multilateral level first.
Okay.
That is a kind of thinking that I share, that if Russian aggression like this, if it goes unpunished, it might give the idea to some other corners of the world that, you know, things like that, aggressions can be done without punishment. And in that sense, it's important that we held Russians and Russian Federation accountable. But then, in terms of dependencies, that is now very important to recognize that is something that is not only going on in Finland, but more broadly in Europe. That many countries are looking at the trade dependencies that have been created, especially in critical sectors. Critical
lessons learned from Russia. Right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that is what we are doing in Finland at the moment. We are going through an assessment and looking at the dependencies, potential vulnerabilities, and the risks that come with that. And in terms of China, for example, we clearly say in Finland that it's not a question about decoupling, not at all. It's a question of diversification of business relations. And that's another angle from which I look at my business facilitation work here. And that's why I want to be part of the efforts to create more business between Finland and the Philippines in order to diversify our business relations and trade relations with Asia.
Right. How does Finland see China? I mean, do you see parallels with Russia, or I mean, from our perspective, there's certainly it's not a monolith, right? But I think we've said in the past that we need to talk more to the diplomats rather than to the military leaders, because when the diplomats are talking, they just you know throw words at each other. But you know, it's something else, of course, when military guys are directing the discourse. Do you see any parallels, or and what can be done? I think to steer the dialogue with China, so that you know those who are in your field, the diplomacy field, right, rather than you know the military guys are the ones you know at the head of the table.
We know that China is a permanent member of the United Nations Security Council as well, and that from that perspective, something that we underline from the European side and from Finnish side is that we expect and we want China to be a responsible actor in this situation.
Yeah.
Then, otherwise, as I said, I mean, we are looking at the dependencies that we have in Finland in our trade relations with China or with other countries as well, and we want to diversify and make sure that there are no vulnerabilities in that sense. This is, as I said, this is something that I understand a process that is going on in many other European countries as well.
Mm-hmm. Uh, when you're looking at diversifying your relationships, I think your Mrs. Murray was saying India was one. Does ASEAN, figure in the picture? I mean,
Absolutely.
where are we?
Absolutely.
Because we're in the middle of giants, right? China on one side, India, even in Southeast Asia. There's of course Singapore that's doing better than everybody else.
Right.
Where do we figure in your radar?
What they are looking at in Helsinki is the whole region, Southeast Asia, and ASEAN as a grouping. You know that EU and ASEAN, they are now strategic partners, which means that they increasingly talk about obviously economic issues, cultural issues, but strategic defense policy issues, which from the European side again we find very important. So overall, I mean, Southeast Asia and ASEAN, it's increasingly important for Finland, trade-wise, geopolitically, and that's why we are increasing our presence here.
Right. You mentioned that one of the silver linings to the conflict in Eastern Europe is that you transition faster toward green energy. We've had the Danish ambassador here who's saying that they have green technology that they want to introduce here. What are you looking at in terms of opportunities? Where are you good at that you think will be a good match for the Philippines?
I leave wind energy to the Danes for the moment. But in terms of green transition overall, I mean, we do have technologies that can be used to harness even more renewable energy, not only wind, but solar as well. But then waste to energy is something that I
waste to energy.
Because as we know, you are dealing here with a huge waste problem like many other countries. And again, we have technologies through which that waste really could be used for energy production. And so that waste would be segregated and different streams of waste would be used for reuse for different purposes.
Right.
So that is something in terms of green transition. Then we are trying to fight the plastics problem here. There's a Finnish company called River Recycle.
River Recycle.
River Recycle. They are cleaning the Pasig River from plastic waste.
Okay.
So that is something that we are involved in. Otherwise, business-wise, we are involved in digitalization, and that's the game of today, obviously, throughout, not only in mobile networks, where obviously Nokia is strongly present, but otherwise too, using 5G throughout the economy and society. So that's the future. And then finally, I should have started with education. Education is something
that's very impressive in Finland.
It is, and it's been, as I see and as we say many times, that our development in the last 100 years, like 100 years ago, we were a poor agrarian country, and now we are affluent, service-oriented country. And two major issues that are behind that development is really education and gender equality. I mean, it's a simplistic truth, but it is so true. We cannot afford to leave 1/2 of our population, women, not to be strongly in labor force and corporate world and all
now
that.
running the government.
Exactly. Yeah. In the current government, as you know, we have 5 parties, all led by young women. And they are very good. They are strong. And obviously, the image of having young women leading a country, that gives us international visibility, and that's good. But I mean, as a Finn, I really feel that they have done a very good job. I mean, first pandemic, now the Russian aggression. It has not been the easiest time, so they have been doing a great job.
Well, have there been any visits or negotiations between any Finnish companies in these fields that you've mentioned, or are they all exploratory at this point?
No, I mean, well, if I mention 3 big Finnish companies that have been present here for decades, Wärtsilä, they have been here in energy for decades. Now
is this a waste to energy or different?
They do waste to energy, but then there is a different Finnish company called Valmet who is doing waste to energy. But Wärtsilä is doing renewables and battery technology. Then Kone.
The
elevators, escalators. Yes. So they are huge on those, and they are involved in more broadly in smart city development. It's not only like you have an escalator in a high rise, but they are thinking sustainably how to build sustainable communities. And then obviously Nokia, as I mentioned, the
Right.
Nokia handsets,
Right.
they were in the old day, but now Nokia is in the network business.
Right.
Very heavily here, but as I said, through their 5G technologies, they want to partner with the Philippines in terms of what we call the fourth industrial revolution throughout the economy. So we are strongly present through these, for example, three big
I know
ones. But then
Connie's
there are
been here
others.
for a long time, but they just quietly.
Yeah, we Finns tend to be many times, we are very humble, down to earth, so we
Yeah.
don't make noise of ourselves as much as we should, probably.
I don't know if I should tell you this, but I heard that the Kone Philippines didn't want to deal with the government because I guess the rules in Europe are so strict that they only choose to do business with the private sector because they don't want to avoid the complications of maybe getting into questionable deals or arrangements or something.
I don't know.
But I guess the point was that the standards in Europe make it so that they ensure good governance among the companies looking to invest in this part of the world.
Yeah,
why is that such so important? I mean, other companies would look at turn a blind eye to bribing. Right, but.
To put it briefly, as I see it, I mean, good governance, respect for human rights, which is very important for Finland. Our foreign and security policy is human rights based, as we say. Anything we do in terms of foreign policy, we look through the lenses of human rights. Good governance and human rights, they are important in themselves, but I always want to make the point that we know that globally, based on experience and even research and statistics, economies and societies where human rights are respected and good governance is important, they provide a more conducive business environment. So a respect for human rights and good governance, it makes economic and business sense. As simple as that in a way. So they are more functional societies and economies. And there is obviously, as we know, corruption eliminates resources that could be used more productively.
Right. Yeah. You mentioned education a while ago, and I heard that your learners are among the top performers in assessment tests in the world. And has there been any collaboration between your government and ours? Because the vice president just a few weeks ago was saying that we're facing an education crisis here, and as you know, she's also Secretary of Education.
Yes.
And the Congress has convened a commission to look at not only the curriculum but maybe to see what preparations we can make to be ready for the fourth IR. Well, has there been anyone reaching out to the Finnish government saying, can you help us out? Because she seems to be doing something right.
Yeah, both ways. I mean, I've been reached out to, and I have been reaching out to the previous administration and the new one. During the pandemic, and it was very useful. During the pandemic, we started a series of webinars between our Ministry of Education and Department of Education here, where we shared our experiences. I mean, the history of Finnish education system, teacher training, which is very important, curriculum development, assessments. I mean, different policy sectors in the field of education. We shared our experiences, and there was a dialogue. Now it's been on hold, but actually, I'm supposed to meet the Vice President in the very near future, and I want to discuss these issues, I mean, in order to reinvigorate, hopefully, the dialogue between officials. And then on the commercial side, we have some Finnish companies who work in the education sector. They are getting increasingly active here, and they sell their products, not only digital products, but, I mean, components of teacher training, for example. Right. So it's both like policy dialogue and then business in the education sector that is going on here. And I really like it. As I said, my parents, they have passed away, but they're both teachers, and they came from very modest origins, and they educated themselves to be teachers. And I have, in a way, from my childhood home, I have seen the importance of education and allowing for social mobility, which is the thing that you through education you get to be able to use the whole society, the whole capacity of the population, and that is important.
Could you talk about you know, your classroom setup, because I don't think many Filipinos know about it. I correct me if I'm wrong, but I heard that most of your teachers or all of your teachers in the basic education have doctoral degrees.
Or master's degrees.
What-
Some have doctoral, but
Yeah.
I mean they have to have masters.
But
right?
even the setup is quite innovative from what I heard. It's not the typical classrooms where everybody sits and does the same thing. I hear that, you know, there are some level of independence that's allowed. Or I mean, maybe you can explain it better than I can.
Absolutely. No, you have the idea. I mean, as we call in Finland, the teachers are more like coaches.
Okay,
Not-
rather than
rather
lecturers.
than, yeah.
Yeah.
And actually, what we say that the students or pupils, they are subjects. They are the
Okay.
protagonists,
Okay.
not like objects of
I see.
teaching.
Okay.
But the students, they run the show. Obviously, the teacher runs the show in the
Right.
classroom, but the students, they are as subjects, and they kind of own the learning experience.
I see.
That's one thing. And that's, secondly, what we now increasingly have in Finland is a multimodal curriculum, which means that traditionally you teach biology, then there is a chemistry class, and there might be a physics class. We are increasingly combining subjects because
I see.
everyday life, it's not like biology here, but it's
Right,
the melange,
right.
it's the mixture.
Right.
And that's how we want to teach kids to approach phenomena in the world.
Yeah.
Like, you know, a tree, it's biology, it's chemistry, and, you know, something like that.
Right. Right.
And for example, sustainable development, it's
Right.
an easy catchphrase, but when you start to look at it more specifically, it has so many aspects that
Right.
if you want to
Multidisciplinary.
teach multidisciplinary, if you
Yeah.
want to teach sustainable development, you have to really open your mind and go across the silos of biology, chemistry, subjects like that. So it's
Wow.
something like that what we want to cultivate increasingly. in
Is
Finland.
that very different from when you were going to school, and what was
It
that?
is, yeah.
Okay.
Like, well, they do it here as well. But I have two boys here going to school, and
Okay.
it's, when I went to school so long time ago.
You tried to remember?
I barely remember, yeah, exactly. In those days, it was really the traditional style that the
Right.
teacher was there in front of the classroom and, you know, giving instructions, and,
Right.
and we were writing down silently.
Right.
So nowadays, what I understand, it's much more participatory,
Okay.
and kids are challenged early age to actually open their mouths and express themselves, which is extremely important because nowadays we are expressing ourselves. You have
Right.
to learn to
Right.
argument and
Right.
make the counter arguments and all
Right.
that. So I think it's going in the good direction overall. I think.
What was your country's experience in the transition? What were some of the? I'm trying to see, you know, from your experience, what we can pick up, right? Or maybe some good practices or even pitfalls that we should avoid. What was the transition like in your country from the old system to what it is now? What were some of the difficulties that you think may be useful for us who's looking at education now would be useful to know?
It's important to remember that, I mean, in our case, like in any case, it's been an evolution.
Okay. It
didn't
wasn't
happen
just
overnight. No,
yeah.
it took decades to develop, have a new version of curriculum, national curriculum, and new ideas coming in. So I'm not saying that it happened really in the last 5
Right.
years. It
Right.
took many decades to actually push these new ideas in. One important aspect, which I think it's important here in the Philippines as well, is that our education system from primary to higher education really cultivates young people so that they have the skills that match the labor market needs.
Okay.
And that has been recently in Finland a big question, because I think earlier on the situation might have been to a large extent the following, that, you know, you take a university degree and you graduate,
Right.
but you do not necessarily have acquired the skills that the labor market needs and expects from you. So now vocational education and training, that's an increasingly attractive avenue of education in Finland. And in Finland, one important aspect again in our education system is that, as we say, there is no dead end. You can, after high school, you can work a little bit. Then if you come to the sense that, okay, I want to study a bit, you can apply for a university spot and you study at the university while working at the same time, vocational university where you work and study and you combine really and do your thesis based on your work experience. So it's really matching the labor market needs and making sure that for nobody there is a dead end. You can always continue.
Right.
Adult education, adult learning is something that many Finns in Finland too. Yeah.
Right. Well, the classrooms are. You said that there's a multidisciplinary approach. Does that mean that there's more than one teacher in the classroom, or are the subjects designed differently, or it's a combination of
A
that?
combination of all of that they do
Okay.
not necessarily have all lessons in the classroom. They go
Okay.
out, not probably in the winter, but they go out to nature. They might have group work, and they have the kids, 5 kids sitting in a group and
Yes, that's what I
producing.
saw in the video.
Exactly.
Some
Yeah.
people were collaborating on a project,
Right.
and then some girl goes to the cafeteria to
Exactly.
work the cashier. I guess that's part of her.
Exactly, something like that.
Yeah.
And it takes a lot of trust both ways. The teachers, they have to trust the kids, that the kids
Okay.
really work, and the other way around. But it works, and it builds this multidisciplinary approach. But we mentioned the word trust, which is very important in Finland. As you probably know, we have been the happiest nation on earth
Right.
for 5 years, and as I always say here, we don't necessarily smile as much as you do here. But how I describe the
Maybe we just can't see because you're so bundled up. It's so cool.
Yeah, no, but I guess for us the happiness is being content with our lives,
Okay.
and factors behind being content is one big issue is trust.
Okay.
I always tell the story here in the Philippines that we trust our neighbors, we even trust politicians, we trust the taxman. We pay a lot of taxes. We don't necessarily like it always, but we pay because we know that we get a lot of in return. So trust is kind of a glue in our society.
What about government spending? I would assume that the Finnish government invested quite a bit in education, infrastructure, training. Was that, or is that correct? Or?
That is true. Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
For many years, I mean, it's been fluctuating a bit, and not necessarily. For example, our R&D investments, they haven't been always growing as much as probably we should put them to grow. But yeah, basically that's the idea and direction, that we constantly have to invest enough in education, infrastructure, and then the substandard.
And your learners don't just learn or study Finnish, but they study different languages also in school. Is that correct?
Yes, we have to study Swedish. Finland is a bilingual country because we belong to the Kingdom of Sweden for 800 years.
Yes.
So Finnish and Swedish are the official languages, and then we are 5.5 million who speak Finnish. So
that's like half of Metro Manila.
Voila, and that's what I hear here. And then I said, okay, the scale makes a difference. But I mean, again, we have from early on, we realized that we want to and we have to learn foreign languages in order to be able to go abroad and study and work. Yeah.
And are there assessment tests, or how is it done in your system? I know that's something that I don't know if you've seen the new Philippine Development Plan. They're recommending sort of a national assessment that what used to be there but was taken out. But what's the Finnish approach?
Yeah, in our case, and that is the difference. In our case, the assessments, they do not play that big a role, because we don't think that having a national standardized assessment that everybody's afraid of for 3 years, it doesn't make sense. We have a baccalaureate. When you are 18, you study, and the last 2-3 years in the gymnasium, those years they are geared towards the baccalaureate. So in that, but having every year since primary school a national standardized assessment, we do not any longer see the point of that. It doesn't actually necessarily improve the education results in that sense.
So how does that work? I'm sorry for asking so many questions about this. I'm just very curious. So here, if you're in a batch, everybody moves at the same time, regardless of your performance. If you're done with the academic year, then you move on. And I think people are starting to rethink that. But in your country, how does that work? Do they move on as batches, or it, as you said earlier, depends on the individual progression?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, every student, if we are talking about higher education, they can formulate and sketch their own individual study path, as we call it. So people do not necessarily go forward in a batch. You might end up going in a batch if you just end up choosing the same subject.
Right,
at the
right, right.
university, but you are totally entitled and actually encouraged to think through what you want to study and go for it individually. And then again, you can make a mistake. You can,
Right.
after 3 years, you might come to your senses and realize
Right.
that this was not the thing for me. And it's
There's no dead end,
It's
as you
totally
said.
no dead end. It's totally okay. Then you
Right.
take up something else, and
Right.
so it is. I mean, individuals are encouraged to actually think through and reflect upon what they want to do in their lives, and then choose an individual study path.
This is a last question on education. Are you concerned that with all of these things going on in Russia and in Ukraine, that and with the tensions rising in this part of the world, is there a concern that maybe resources will be diverted from the more important things that governments should be spending on, like the quality of education, the quality of life, ensuring that people are happy, and those resources are being now used to beef up defense, maybe modernize military equipment. Is that a concern?
I wouldn't call it a concern in Finland, but that's a fact that is happening at the moment. I mean,
Right.
for obvious reasons that you mentioned. I mean, we
Yeah.
are increasing our defense spending in Finland.
Yeah.
One aspect of that is obviously that if and when we are joining the NATO, there is this 2% GDP threshold in a
You
way.
guys can afford it.
Yeah, we are there already, actually.
Yeah.
But I mean, at the moment, yeah, the defense spending is going up. But I think the whole Finland, and nothing but the Finland, we realize that this has to be done now.
Yeah.
But then finally, it's a political choice. I mean, later on, it's a political choice. As I said, I mean, education spending, it's been fluctuating,
Yeah.
and not everybody's been happy with that, because
Right.
many people think that we should actually invest all the time heavily in education.
Right.
But it's a political
It's
choice
a
finally.
reality. Yeah.
Exactly.
Can I move back to the bilateral relations in terms of trade? What are some of the opportunities that you see there, both from the Finnish side and from the Philippine side? What are maybe some things that you do very well that we should be looking at buying more of, or what? And I know you've been in lockdown for most of your posting
Right.
here, but maybe what are
Yeah.
some of the things that you've seen here that you think Finnish people would be interested in?
I mean, what should be exported from here to Finland?
And then maybe
Well,
you should be-
interestingly enough, if you look at the statistics, what is being, surprisingly, what's being exported from here to Finland is electronics, machinery.
from the Philippines.
Well, from the Philippines,
Okay.
absolutely. And interestingly, from Finland, what we see in the statistics, it's been paper, wood products, because we are
We have a
as
lot
we
of
said,
agroforestry.
and that used to be the industry in Finland. Now it's more ICT, chemistry. So those are some of the existing product groups in our bilateral trade. But as I said, what I would like to push, and I feel that there is a demand here, is in green technologies, be it in any sector, something that it's sustainable in terms of the environment. So that is something from the Finnish side. But then obviously from the Philippine side, what we would like to export to Finland, that is for your authorities to figure out.
You said that there are some companies already doing business here, but what are some of course, when you look at Southeast Asia, there's a lot of competition, right, among us, right? Singapore, Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand, and I'm sure when your country looks at the region, there's so many things that can draw your attention. But based on what you've been hearing from the investors from Finland, what are some of the things that would draw more of their attention? What can we do, right, to get more of the Finnish attention, more than losing it to Thailand or Malaysia, Indonesia, Singapore? I mean, what are some of the things that can work, I think, for your audience?
Well, I think existing strong points that you have is obviously it's a huge
language.
market, 110 million people and potential customers. Language, English-speaking population here, young population. That is something that we all repeat all the time, but that is very true. I mean, that's the one attractive part of the Philippine economy in terms of attracting Finnish business as well. Then, as I mentioned earlier, and what I like to push and work on here as well is good governance in business. That is important for us, and that is something that it's an important.
Yeah, I was surprised at how
portfolio.
Connie was so serious
Mhm.
about that point. I mean, they didn't even want they were excluding a certain segment altogether just because they were so serious about
Mm.
sticking to good governance policies.
Mm.
They don't even want to be tempted, so that's why
Right. Yeah.
they were focusing on a particular sector only,
Exactly.
which
yeah.
is quite limiting. But at the same time, I guess that's their principles, right?
Yeah, those are our principles and values. And as I
Yeah.
said, I mean, as we see it, good governance, it makes business sense in the long run. I mean,
Right.
I guess you might get quick wins through less good governance, but I mean, in the
Right.
long run, good governance is conducive to have a very stable,
Right.
productive business environment.
So I don't know. Are you at liberty to maybe mention a few things that, in terms of good governance,
Mhm.
some of the things that we could do better that would make the environment here more appealing to Finnish businessmen and investors? Are there any? I know they talk a lot about the ease of doing business here, but for the Philippine perspective, it's an improvement. But of course, from your perspective, it may be okay. Well, what else is coming?
No, but that is, I mean, ease of doing business, getting rid of, as we call it, red tape. That is an important factor. And
Yes.
we have red tape in every country. In my country, there is red tape. And I'm sure that foreign businessmen and women in Finland, they complain about things that we have red tape. So that is one thing that the regulatory framework and system is predictable.
Okay.
Laws are not changed here and there, but there's
Right.
a predictability of the business environment. That is what businessmen tell me and anybody that's conducive to attracting business. So predictability. When the more broadly, obviously, the free trade arrangements that are being built up in the region, they are of interest to European and Finnish businessmen. Now, as we know, they are debating the ratification of RCEP in the Senate. So as I see, it will be the world's largest free trade arrangement. So
that's interesting to you. You're keeping an eye
absolutely,
on that.
That is something that we follow here. And so things like this, predictability on the micro level, predictability at the macro level as well. And that's what business. I haven't been working in business, but that's what businessmen tell me.
Right. That's what you've been hearing.
Predictability. That's important. And well, I have to say connectivity in terms of electricity, other infrastructure. Those are, I think,
the concerns
and important points to improve probably and work on.
Right. What about visa? I mean, do Finnish people need a visa to come to the Philippines? Is that a requirement?
Finnish people can come as a tourist for 30 days.
Okay.
That's another thing. I mean, how I feel about my work here, obviously, I'm pitching for Finland, as I call it, but I'm pitching for the Philippines vis-a-vis Finland, and I feel that that's my job as well.
Right.
So I want to factually tell Finnish companies, business life, and Finns what there is to see here and experience and do business. Absolutely.
Right. What do you think that Thailand's been doing that made it more successful in attracting your attention than the Philippines? Are they advertising? Are they? Well, of course, they've obviously spent a lot on infrastructure and hotels and other things.
In terms of tourism, our national carrier Finnair,
they
fly direct to Bangkok. I was posted in Bangkok almost 20 years ago.
Okay.
And that was the start of, I happened to be there when the real boom of tourism from Finland started. I remember seeing the numbers growing almost by the week. And Finnair started flying directly to Bangkok, even to Phuket. So that's one thing, the connectivity. And obviously, I mean, because the globe is round, so Finnair has been the shortest connection from Europe to Asia. It might be interesting to hear, but that is true because the globe is round. So that was the stronghold of Finnair for a long time. Yeah.
Is there any initiative to discuss an air agreement between your country and ours?
Not at the moment, but every now and then the idea comes up that whether there should be a direct flight, and obviously from my perspective that would be great. Yeah, absolutely.
Does Finnair fly elsewhere? Singapore, I suppose.
Singapore, Hong Kong, Bangkok.
Yeah.
Many destinations in Japan, Korea.
Right, short hop from one of those stops.
It's exactly.
I'm not sure if they're called fifth right agreements or whatever, but the complicated terms and air agreements.
In IATA, they are. That's true.
Well, I hope that's something that can be taken up.
Right.
Military cooperation. I mean, that's also part of.
Mm.
I know the Swedes have been trying to sell us their fighter jets. So what are some of the things that you can tell us, or you're at liberty to tell us? I know some of these things are sensitive. Are there any talks?
No, I can be very open about. There are no talks
Okay.
about having a military or defense agreement in the sense that there would
Okay.
be like conducive to having more defensive material sales between our countries.
Okay.
Nothing like that
Right.
ongoing at the moment.
Okay.
No.
So ICT, energy, those are the major
Green
industries.
transition, digitalization, education, as I say.
Yeah.
Those are the three big,
Right.
I would say, sectors that actually go across the society. I mean, they are not like sectors.
Right.
They are more broadly.
Or maybe
to
there
be
should be a Finnish school here. There's a
Yeah.
there's a British school. Maybe
Yeah.
I don't know how. I think the British system might be a little different from
Right.
from your educational system, right?
It is,
Yeah.
as far as I know.
So I don't know if you're happy or disappointed with what your boys are experiencing.
No, they
Yeah,
are.
okay.
I mean, academically, the school that they are going to, it's very, very good. No, we are very happy.
Yeah.
And they are happy.
Well, Ambassador, thank you very much for your time. But maybe before we go, is there anything else that maybe we haven't asked that you like to cover? Maybe what your embassy is doing for 2023. Are there any major things that we should be watching out for from your office?
Well, now that we are here, so I just want to make
Yes.
it known that we are back here with an embassy since 2020, and now we have a beautiful office in BGC, and we are involved in many, many things. So just the message to everybody that if you want to do business or you want to know more about Finland, so do not hesitate and just get in touch with us. We are there for you.
Do we need a visa to go to Finland?
You actually do.
Okay.
Yeah. So you apply through
Schengen.
through Schengen visa. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Exactly.
Well, Your Excellency, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for having me.